welcome to Today in Woburn. I'm your host, Samantha Stone, and I'm very excited today because we begin our election episodes. And what better guest to have to kick that off than Charles Viola, who goes by Chuck and who I will refer to as Chuck today, but who is on the ballot as Charles.
Correct.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. Thank you to the Woburn Public Media Center for having me here as well.
We are so lucky to have a wonderful production crew that does all the hard work. I just get to show up and ask questions, which is great.
Yep.
Well, you've got your Woburn orange on.
Absolutely.
Which I feel like I neglected today, but I'm so glad that you were able to join me. So I thought we could start today with just a little bit of chatting about, now I know you've run for other positions in the past,
Correct.
which I love to see. I love seeing our neighbors and residents be engaged in the community. Tell us a little bit about why you've chosen to run for city council this year.
Sure. Well, I've decided to run for city council this year because I feel as though Ward 7 needs an alderman that's going to be there that knows the ward, knows the issues, and can get things accomplished, which I've walked the ward numerous times. I've walked the city. I know the issues of Ward 7. I know how to address them, and I hope to get those things accomplished.
That's great. So I know infrastructure is one of the big challenges in Ward 7. You have a lot of passion around that, which I love. Tell us a little bit about what some of those infrastructure issues are that you hope to address in the role of City Council.
Sure. A couple of the issues that I'd like to get addressed are first to the streets and sidewalks. Some of them the most deplorable in the whole city, which it's been 30, 40 years since some of them have actually been addressed. I've had residents, as a resident myself, I had people call me to tell me that their sidewalks are broken, they've got huge potholes on the street, and I refer them which part of the city to contact, which would be the DPW. Another issue is the water infrastructure in Ward 7. We have some of the oldest cast iron pipes in the city, which need to be relined or replaced. And that needs to be done soon, because some of them are lined actually with asbestos.
Well, that's actually kind of a probably a more frightening statement than it means. I'm assuming that since we're still running there that we need to replace them, but it's not posing an immediate threat?
Correct. Yeah, there's no immediate threat. I was the chairman of the water committee from 2006 to 2010, so I do have a good grasp on the water issues in the city of Woburn and Ward 7 itself.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. So for those of us who are not familiar, I mean, I recognize that old pipes, they erode, they create extra minerals in the water, I assume, they create filtration issues, and they can break and cause all different kinds of other damage.
Correct.
This particular pipes that need to be replaced, especially given your history of being on the Water Commission, do we have a sense of how much infrastructure that is to replace at this point? Is this a really big project or a relatively modest one?
To be honest, I actually don't know the answer to that question. That'd be something that that we'd have to look to the engineering department to see what pipes need to be addressed first, second, third, and so on. Okay.
It sounds like this is a challenge that's been around for a long time. Certainly, if you were familiar with it back in 2010. Yep. I imagine budget prioritization is really kind of the thing that's held it back. Is there anything else that's been at play?
We have the water stabilization account, which we could use funding from that to do water infrastructure projects, which we've done in the past, such as the Rag Rock water tank, the new filtration plant at Hon Pond, which myself and the committee that I was on, we worked tirelessly to get that accomplished. And then there's also 2 pumping stations in West Woburn, Ward 7, that we had implemented and put into place. One's down the 4 corners, and then one's up on Dix Road Extension.
Tell us about the Water Stabilization Fund. I'm actually not very familiar with it. I've heard you reference it in the past. Is this like money that's required by the state to put aside? Is this something we have put aside as a city?
I believe it's the money that we've put aside as the city, which I believe it comes from the taxes for the water and sewer rates.
So that money sits in a fund, and I'm assuming there's some operating costs that it funds, just general operation. Correct. But there's enough surplus there to address some infrastructure issues?
Absolutely, yes. Okay. And we use those funding generally throughout the year, or it's budgeted for it each year. Okay.
Since we're talking about water, let's talk about flooding.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know that Four Corners in particular, which is in Ward 7, is an area, I mean, there are more than that area across Woburn, but that is one that I see and hear quite a lot about.
Correct.
Has a pretty consistent flooding issue when we get fast rains like we
Absolutely.
got this week.
Yep.
I imagine,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about what what you know of that needs to be addressed potentially that we can fix it. I don't know enough about how to fix that particular problem.
From my understanding, that there's a conduit under the street where Russell Street is that the city probably has to go in, maybe open up the road, make that wider so more water can flow through there, and as well as we could dredge out the river that's in there behind there to allow more water to flow. And then also, great news that I heard recently is Demoulas actually donated a portion of land that's behind the banks and everything over there to the city of Woburn. So we could actually use that property and possibly make a retention pond. So when the water does come down, we could send it over to there, and then slowly we can allow it to go through and go out of the four corners, so we don't have as much flooding.
Well, you are way on top of it. You know exactly what needs to happen, which I think is great. So this is one of those projects that I know has been discussed for a long time.
Correct.
At any point that you're aware of, has this been funded and not deprioritized, or we just haven't yet gotten it on the agenda?
I just saw that there is funding for it for this next fiscal year to have some improvements done down there. So that's a good start for now. And I know about 2 years ago, KFC Taco Bell actually had a collapsed pipe underneath their building that they replaced and fixed to allow the water to flow through better. But it seems since that happened, it was fine. Then about a year or two later, we've had this problem again with the flooding.
Well, I think it's really interesting to look at that space that Market Basket gave us. There's the ability to do, sort of open space and land, but also address some water issues at the same time. It can sort of be dual purpose. That's great. Thank you. I learned something new already, Jack. Isn't that great? Great. Let's talk a little bit about, are there any other big infrastructure projects like that? I know you talked about sort of routine road and sidewalk maintenance, which, across the city, there's some pretty tough spots.
I do agree. I do agree.
And there's some spots that are super well maintained. I happen to live on a pretty busy thoroughfare that was repaved not that long ago, so I'm fortunate in terms of the street I live on, but we all drive around town,
Correct,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anything else like that you have as a priority to address, or you've been hearing residents talk about?
From what I've heard from residents when I've been speaking to them recently, the speeding on these side streets is a main concern to them with the safety of themselves and the children that are playing in the streets and sidewalks too.
Yeah, because Russell and Lexington are both in Ward 7.
Correct.
Yeah.
And Cambridge Road. So.
Okay. Oh, Cambridge Road. Yeah. So there's a lot of fast
main
traffic.
Streets. Yes, absolutely.
That goes through there.
Yep.
What do we do about something like that? I mean, we have, speed signs posted.
We do have speed signs posted. We have the signs that say what your speed is, but I think we could work with the police department and their traffic enforcement division to maybe see if we can maybe even just have a cruiser sitting there that's not in use, because people will slow down if they do see a police car, even if it's unattended.
It's true. We do, or we're trained to slow down when we see that.
Absolutely.
I know it works when I'm on the highway and I see somebody stop. Not that I ever speed, of course. I try not to. Not too much anyways. Excellent. That's super helpful. What are some of the other concerns that residents have raised? And it may not be specifically to Ward 4. It may just be sort of things around the city that are things that they'd like to see improved and expanded on. One
big issue that I've always heard when I've ran, even whether it was school committee or for Alderman of Ward 7, is the overdevelopment of Woburn. We're taking these parcels of land and putting these major construction developments on them. And it's encroaching on people's lives, and it's being affecting their quality of life.
These are real concerns. I know we've talked a lot about with the mayor and others looking at the infrastructure issues, the traffic issues that come along with it, potential burden on schools and things. Growth has some benefit.
Yes, absolutely.
It also has some risks and concerns.
Right.
I apparently haven't been over by like Target in that area in a long time, and a couple weeks ago I went down into the store for the first time and realized how massive those buildings are there. Now, I knew they were being built, but having not actually been there and witnessed them and myself, I don't realize it. What's your sort of philosophy and approach that you'll take? Sitting on city council, of course, you represent Ward 7, but you also have responsibilities for the city overall. What will be your philosophy on how to address new building projects?
New building projects, they need to meet the surroundings of the neighborhood. You can't have a huge development coming into a small neighborhood and it's going to basically going to interfere with the residents' quality of life. So we need to make sure that those developments aren't being too big, that they're comparable to what we could put in that area.
One of the things that I'm sure people will, developers and builders will say is, it's significant cost. So obviously the more they build, the more return they get from those investments. Is there a a point where, let me rephrase that. Let me actually ask it as a question instead of an observation. What are the things and signals that you would look for to say, hey, this is out of place with the neighborhood? We don't want something here that's that big.
First, we got to look at the neighborhood itself in general, see how big the neighborhood is, if it's urban development or if it's small houses here and there staggered along. Next, then we need to get into engineering, talk to the engineering department, see what their thoughts are, and also the zoning board of appeals to see what they think about it.
And are there any areas within Ward 7, because our loyal watchers know I'm directionally challenged, so I sort of have a sense of Ward 7, but are there areas that are prime for potential development specifically in Ward 7 that are of concern to watch?
Right now, no, because there's actually 2 big townhouse developments that actually went in within the past 4 to 6 years, which myself, I represented neighbors in those areas, and I successfully had the number of units knocked down from what they wanted to be to take some out of there, so it wasn't as big of a burden on the neighbors surrounding the area. That's
great. Now, we also know that in Ward 7 there's some commercial, right? Because you've got Cranebridge Street, and so we've talked a lot about what we're going to do to support residents and neighbors and such. From a business standpoint, what are some of the things that you would like to do to support those businesses as a role of city councilor?
I'd like to see some programs come in maybe to help the smaller business owners to see what we can do, maybe the ones that are struggling to pay their bills. Because I know cities like Somerville, Cambridge, they have funding in place for those types of businesses. So I'd like to compare what they're doing to see maybe we can bring those programs here to Woburn.
Yep. I'm always enthralled by the idea of even just, I know we have a Woburn Business Association.
Yes, we do.
Who does some really good work. I'd love to see us find ways to get even more creative to expand.
Correct.
We've got some great new businesses and some great long-term businesses in our city. We're really fortunate.
We have a lot of great restaurants here as well.
Oh my goodness, it's like music to my ears. It's all about food. I ate like an apple on the way here. That's all I've had today. So food is going to make my stomach crumble, but it's all good. So tell me a little bit about some of the places that you like to frequent in Woburn. So what are some of your favorites?
I like Marco's Deli. I like the subs there. Basically, I like Ginger Road of Woburn. I like the Chinese and Asian food there is good. Louis Pizza, of course, one of our favorites here in Woburn.
Always, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's my husband's favorite pizza place as well. He likes the gooey cheese that's on it that they do. That's awesome. And I know you grew up in Woburn.
Yes, I did.
Right? So tell us a little bit, what schools did you go to and such?
I've lived here my whole life, so I'm 36 years old. I've born and raised here in Woburn, same house, Morningside Circle. I went to the Reeves Elementary School for the first 5 years of school. Then I went to the Joyce Middle School. And after, in 8th grade, I decided I want to try something different. Instead of coming here to Woburn High School, I ended up going to Minuteman Regional High School in Lexington.
That's great. Did you, what trade did you study?
I took telecommunications and electronics.
Oh, that's fantastic. I have had children who went to Woburn High, where we are right now in the studio. But also, I had one child that went to Northeast Metro Tech.
Okay, that's another great school.
They both had great experiences, different people, different challenges, but they loved it. That was really, really valuable to them. That's great. So you live in the same house that you grew up in?
Correct, yes I do.
So I can't imagine how much stuff would be in my house if I never moved over my lifetime. What do you love about that? There must be some things that are really special.
Love the neighborhood. It's a nice, quiet neighborhood. Neighbors all know each other, great friends. So it's a nice, tight-knit community that we have there.
That's fantastic. I love it. Tell us something a little bit about yourself that people might not realize, might not know about you. I know you've been around a long time, so it might be hard to find this. But
I've adopted 2 dogs. Recently, I just adopted a puppy from Tennessee from a bad situation down there. So I've been working with him, trying to train him. So that was there. From the situation he came in, he's complete 180 degrees from what he was before.
Yeah. That's great. Congratulations, and they're lucky to have found you. What kind of a dog is it?
It's a Dutch Shepherd.
Big, right?
Yes.
I mean, this is what I'm envisioning.
Yep, no, he's about 68 pounds right now, and he's a year and a half. So
you've got a little bit of growing left to do.
Oh, yes. Yep.
That's great. I had a 90-pound husky.
Okay.
So he was a fatty little husky. We loved him, but he was definitely on the bigger side of it.
A lot of fur to clean up, too, I bet.
A lot of fur to clean up. And unfortunately, sometimes I would walk down the sidewalks, and I noticed a woman who lived in the neighborhood. I didn't know her personally, but she would just cross the street when we walked, and he was just a big fluffy ball of love. But I thought she might be a little afraid of dogs and anything.
Right.
And then one day she said, "Are you walking a wolf?"
Oh,
Because
geez.
he had the coloring and he had 2 blue eyes. But I thought, no, I promise. He's very friendly. Would
Yep.
you like to come over and say hi? I don't want you to feel uncomfortable around him.
Right.
So yeah, so that's wonderful, and love dogs. That's
Absolutely.
fantastic. So. Tell us a little bit about your campaign. So you're out, I know, you know lots of folks, but there's been a
Absolutely.
lot of wonderful new people who have moved into your
They have
community
been,
as
yes.
well. Tell us how you're getting out there and getting to know people.
Basically, getting out, same thing, going door to door, talking to the residents. Got to be careful now with the pandemic going on. Some of the residents don't feel comfortable opening the door, so talking to them through the door with the mask on, or just leaving a pamphlet on their door.
Yeah.
And for them, with my information on the back, to get in touch with me.
Yeah,
after.
that's great. And I know you have some information on a Facebook page.
I
Is
do,
there
yes.
anywhere else that folks would, that you'd like to direct them to stay in touch?
Voters, residents can visit Elect Charles Viola on Facebook, or they can go to charlesviola.com, or they can give me a call at 781-935-4417. Phone's always on, and I make sure to get back to them as soon as I can.
I love it. Isn't it great when you buy your name on a website?
Absolutely.
It kind of feels good. I'm not
Yep.
going to lie. It feels good. Unfortunately, Samantha Stone was taken long before I thought to be clever enough to get my URL. But I want to talk a little bit about the commitment of City Council.
Absolutely.
So you worked on the Water Commission, as you described. You've certainly championed specific causes,
Correct.
specifically to the neighborhood. Being on City Council is a whole nother level.
Correct.
And frankly, a lot more work than I ever appreciated until the last couple years when I started to get to know the system and our local government a little bit better.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about why that commitment is important to you and how you hope to serve the community overall.
Well, I've always been told by my parents to give back to the community, so this is one of the things I want to do, to continue to give back to the community from the standpoint from a resident, now then moving on to somebody in city government to help out and to be the voice of those residents that maybe don't want to be known, don't want to say things in public, to maybe think that there's going to be recourse against them.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. One of the great things about Woburn to me is that it's a city.
Yes.
And it has a lot of the infrastructure, and we're close to a lot of things that come with being a city. I've always felt, for the most part, though I feel a little bit like a smaller town.
Absolutely, it does feel like a small town, the tight-knit community that we do have, that everybody looks out for each other.
Yeah, and I feel really lucky for that. I feel really fortunate. My kids were the kids who ran up and back down to 2 or 3 specific neighbors that had kids around our kids' age, and they lived what I think a lot of people think of as, sort of a past life, but I think that's just, in Woburn, we're fortunate to do that. But it's also a challenge I found until I had kids. It was hard to get to know my neighbors, and I didn't know about all the amazing things. Instead, I started looking for it.
Right.
What are some things that you might want to do, or you would encourage the city to do, to improve overall communications for those who might not have communications coming from the schools, or may not be familiar with the city, or maybe just want to reconnect with their neighbors to sort of get tied into things?
I'd like to see the city use their reverse 911 system that we have, that I brought forth maybe 10 years ago, that we finally have now, and use that more often to notify residents of things that are going on throughout the city, not just about a water line break or something like that, but maybe of good things that are going on in general.
Yeah. Yeah, we might as well celebrate some good things together,
Absolutely.
right?
Yep.
What are some of your favorite Woburn traditions?
Love Flag Day, the Halloween parade, and just the Mayor Senior Appreciation Dinner. I always look forward to that every year, volunteering my time, giving back, and feeding the elderly of our city.
Yeah, those are really great things. The Halloween parade, I am so excited to have it back this year. We really missed it last year.
And I did hear that we may have the fireworks coming up in October too.
I've got my fingers crossed. I know that the mayor mentioned that there was a permit that was approved for it, so I can't remember if we knew the date offhand, but that's super exciting, and those are wonderful traditions.
They are.
Yeah,
They are.
I love it. When you look back at your childhood and you look back at the school, the Reeves building is not the same building as is there now,
That's
right?
not the building that I actually went to elementary school in.
Right.
The elementary school that I went to school in is more so where the playground is.
I remember, because my now 23-year-old was a Malcolm White student, but they used like the old Reeves campus for a year.
When they were working on the Malcolm White, correct.
Yeah. So we were over there for 1 year. And we had quite a few Little League games on the Reeves fields down there.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Which always cracks me up because dogs kind of come running across the field
They
there.
do.
For some,
They do.
none of the
Yep.
other fields, but on that one, for some reason.
I know.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell the folks who are voting what they should know about you and your qualifications for
Sure.
City Council.
Absolutely. Well, as a proud homeowner, taxpayer, and lifelong resident of Woburn, I'm pleased to announce my candidacy for Alderman of Ward 7. You need an alderman who will address your concerns in a professional manner through open and transparent government. I've walked the neighborhoods, I've talked to the residents, I know the issues, I know how to fix them. I plan to be the residents' independent voice at City Hall and fight for what you need and deserve. As you said, I'm a product of the Woburn and regional public school systems. I understand the importance of a quality education, and I'm glad that Woburn does give that. After high school, I went on to Middlesex Community College, where I earned my associate's degree in criminal justice. From there, I went to work for the Middlesex Sheriff's Office. For the past 17 years, I've worked there as a corrections officer. And I'm proud to do the job that I do there, to try and change people's lives and mold them so that way when they come out of jail and incarcerated, that they change and they're better. From an early age, as I said, I was taught to give back to the community. I volunteered on many various city projects that solved real problems and improved the quality of lives for all of residents. As your alderman, I'll continue to advocate and fight to keep Woburn affordable for all of its residents and businesses, and I pledge to work hard to make Woburn a desirable place to live, work, and raise a family.
That sounds like a lot of goodness there.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you, and I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, it's really a great opportunity for us to get to know the candidates who are running for office. And I really think, and I believe this wholeheartedly, that folks like yourself who step up and want to play a role in our local government have a really big and direct impact on all of our lives and what the city will turn out to be. So thank you for doing it. This isn't easy.
Thank you. No, it's not.
And I know there's a lot of hard work that goes into
Correct.
that. I know with COVID restrictions and just being generally careful for folks, that in-person events, I mean, we may not see as many of those as election cycles as we have. Do you have anything coming up or anything that you want people to know who might want to just sit down and chat with you a little bit, whether it's virtually or in person?
Like I said, my phone's always on. People can call me, or they can get in touch with me through my Facebook page, the Elect Charles Viola, or they can go to charlesviola.com and get in touch with me through there.
That's great. You've had a chance to get to know the city quite well. But when you take a step back, you think about it, it could be somebody in city government here in Woburn or just someone that you admire in general. Is there someone that you aspire to be like in this kind of public role?
That's a good question.
I know, and I'm totally putting you on the spot, so think about it. Take your time. I would have a hard time answering this question myself, but I always like to, I think sometimes that's helpful to know who our heroes are. Right.
I'd say maybe Abe Lincoln, good, honest Abe. I'm an honest person, and I'll always tell you how it is.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good person to aspire to be like. We're
Absolutely.
lucky to have that. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Chuck. And
Thank
for
you.
those folks who are interested in learning more about Chuck's campaign, you can go, I'd encourage you to go to Elect Charles Viola. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is.
Make sure I got that right. I don't want to get that wrong. And I really appreciate everybody's participation in the election series that we have running so we can all get to know the wonderful folks who have stepped up to help lead our city into the next future that we have. Thank you all for watching, and as always, continue to take good care of each other.